post a couple of posts about this up on YouTube because I can't post on Facebook anymore. Facebook has me locked out. I've been disappeared. I don't know if I can think of a single circumstance when a nation so deliberately has attempted to dismantle itself in so many different ways as the United States is doing apparently under the current administration, but also with the complicity of a Congress which even members of the Republican Party know better than, for the most part, but are unable to actually present any kind of resistance of their own, because their party has been, on the populist side of it, has been completely subordinated to Trump and MAGA's interests, or at least to giving him a free hand in doing whatever he wishes to do. When I saw the meeting with Zelensky, I was nearly physically ill from just this kind of reaction. And but it's not just foreign policy, right? It's like the destruction of the administrative state, which is essentially a stated goal of Project 2025, which, obviously, look, oh no, I know nothing about that. And now absolutely following it across the board. The destruction of that. Yeah, this is not a matter of like the right versus left. The old Concordian used to be, look, abortion was a big question, taxation levels, whether or not it's better for the nation as a whole to have lower taxes and a smaller government. But this is nothing like that. This is a complete realignment in the foreign policy of basically switching from the world that we created after World War II, right? The structures that we built that basically made us the unipower after the fall of the Soviet Union, right? We have essentially basically given up or are trying to dismantle everything that is of our power. You could kind of look at maybe Portugal's, decolonization, where they didn't put up a fight at all. But there was a situation where it was very obvious that, like, maintaining their colonies was something that they couldn't really do. Other nations had already given theirs up through violence, through whatever, and in a sense they were just bowing to the arc of history, as it were, and saying, we're not going to do this anymore. And you see, they're not entangled in their former colonies the way, say, France is, especially. But even England, has some sense of entanglement with them. Portugal was able to cut their ties completely, but they weren't a major force at that point. And like I said, they were following the obvious arc of history. Is this the obvious arc of history that we throw away? The idea of stable borders in Europe to prevent a world war, that it doesn't feel like it to me. It feels like it's a very singular thing. And now, there's, of course, a new flow of rumors. What is he? I don't know. There's some code word, agent somebody or another with a K, but it looks like bullshit. There's something there. There's enough smoke that there's something there, but like you don't know exactly what it is. could just be an immense respect for dictators, you know? That's probably the best you can put it as. But it's sort of crazy, right? I was trying to look for a historical figure who was as bad, right? If you look at, like, you know, Neville Chamberlain, you know, there are a few things with Chamberlain that you can throw up in his defense. One, England was not ready for the war. Two, their allies were not willing to stand behind them for it at that point. They really were not. France was in disarray, and there really wasn't anybody else able to handle things. But England not being ready, the years that they bought with giving up Czechoslovakia, essentially, did give them time to modernize their Air Force especially, but to modernize their military and to prepare. And they went whole hog into that. Like, it was not as if, oh, you know, it wasn't as if peace in our time, and then, you know, just treating that agreement as fiat. No, there was an understanding that this is the last time we can afford to do this. You know, we can't keep letting Germany expand the way it is. You know, without any consideration of how evil Nazis are or anything like that. It was clearly in England's, in the United Kingdom's best interests to prevent Germany from taking over more of the continent. And, yeah. But our whole foreign policy has switched. Now, the foreign policy, and I want to get to other things as well later, but the foreign policy is really the biggest thing here. Because that feels like that's where national interests are sort of most wrapped up in. And when you get to trade deals and trade bullshit that's going on as well, which is, like, it feels like it's attempting to dismantle the capitalist structure that we have. You know, this is the whole thing. It's like, every time a Republican comes into office, I have worries that their deregulation is going to cause another meltdown, as it happens every fucking time in my life, at least. Is that they deregulate the shit out of stuff. The protections that were in place for for investors, for consumers, for whatever, for the populace as a whole, are all thrown out, and the market collapses because it's been allowed to operate without any controls. You know, Glass-Steagall should have never been repealed, but now they're repealing the watered-down version that was put in place after 2008, or at least working to. And we know what happens when you deregulate the banking industry. The more you do that, the more you're putting, you know, dice that aren't going to come out well. They're like loaded dice. They're going to come out really, really well, and you're going to think you're going to always win, and then they shit you on your biggest bet or whatever, and they just, you know, they collapse the whole thing. It just becomes a gamble and creates bubbles. But and other regulations just as problematic in other sorts of ways in terms of environmental issues and whatnot. But at least eggs are $10 a dozen or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I was looking at, you know, points. So if you take a look at Britain during the period in the Age of Reason, when you're looking at the period of Frederick the Great, you look at the massive shift from one side to the other in their alliance. Yeah, but their national interests remained the same, which was to create a balance of power in Europe and to prevent anybody from getting control in Europe. They had a specific goal, and they did not control everything in the world in the way that the US has been. Um, Shifting in favor of Russia, which is essentially a client of China right now, it's not going to pry them away from China. They know where their buns are being polished properly, right? Like it's inconceivable, right? It just is inconceivable that this is going to aid us in any sense of the word. It's really just a capitulation and an attempt to destroy what has been our strongest and staunchest allies, which is the NATO alliance, or at least to break us from them and create a multipolar world. One of the reasons we've been so powerful is this set of alliances that we've made. That's, yes, the US is the biggest boat out there, okay? And has been all along. But the amount of other powerful allies that we've had, and the ability to support and to cut off huge, to use power economically, military where necessary, but hopefully not much. Although the nukes and whatnot serve their purpose, I guess. As well as the soft power that we've projected in conjunction with this, to promote a sort of world order where borders are largely stable, certainly in Europe, but even in other parts of the world, untamed aggression is looked upon unkindly. Now, China's a special case. They hold that kind of view as well. But their borders extend into certain disputed areas that they're not willing to let loose, and Taiwan being the biggest among them. And it's not like they recognize North and South Korea as being two separate countries, particularly. Right? So, although they certainly see the impossibility of dealing with the South, taking it out or anything. The North is more just a thorn that they're using. But yeah, we are destabilizing a world order that, at least since the end of World War II, has been tremendously to our favor, and no signs of anything cracking except for the fact that China is becoming our competitor to replace the Soviet Union in its day. China is rotten to the core in a lot of ways, and I think it had a chance to make a turn, just as Russia had a chance to make a turn. Instead of taking Russia's move to a kleptocracy, China has reversed course and become, again, an autocratic kleptocracy for Russia. China has reversed course to become, again, a communist-driven autocracy instead. She pretty much undid the things that made China able to catch up to us to some extent, to make China a real threat. He has undone all those to prevent an ideological shift towards things like a real free market, things like a real respect for the international order that they were buying into. But they were really, the movements that he took, just like, when we look at like the Soviet Union, people say, oh, communism is a horrible, lost the war. I don't know. What lost the Cold War, I would say, is more autocracy rather than the economic system. Like, I think there would be, I don't know, because bureaucracies are so horrible, right? I mean, and that's the argument against the administrative state or the deep state. You know, the thing that provides us, makes sure that we have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, that our rivers don't catch on fire, that we can prepare adequately for disasters, and for looming goals like climate change that will require us all to kind of put in some degree of pain to not face a much greater pain in the future, that restrain private Ponzi schemes, not to be confused with, you know, there's a significant difference between a government-backed Ponzi scheme, and I agree completely with Musk on this, as Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, but it's one that's based. So the idea of a Ponzi scheme is I trust that I will get mine in the end, right? Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense when it's based on, I'm doing arbitrage on these stamps, which was the original Ponzi scheme. I don't remember what they were. There was some kind of import stamps or something, which, you know, trusting in something that's gonna make money according to someone's word, but doesn't actually make sense, that's not good, okay? But the idea of, I give you my money now and I'm gonna get good returns on it, maybe ridiculously good returns, but yeah, I'm gonna get returns on it out of the money other people invest. That might not be terrible in all cases, okay? If something is a growing industry, that's actually how it works, which is why Ponzi schemes do catch people. Because if you do have a good idea that can make money, it works in very much the same sort of way, right? It's not just a bubble, there is something underlying it. Well, in the case of Social Security, the thing underlying it is the guarantee of the US government. Right? It's the same thing that says our money, our paper money, is worth something. It's not an unsecured value. But one of the things that may or may not be happening, who knows, because this world has gone so fucking chaotic at this point, and the decisions are just so insane, and you have people saying things like, you know, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, we should get rid of it kind of idea, which it is. But it's one backed by the government, which is a little different. Just like if cryptocurrencies get bought into by the government, they become something that is guaranteed a value. It doesn't do any good for the government. It puts the government's, you know, it's like investing in the tulip bubble or whatever. You don't really want the government investing in something that's highly volatile unless it actually has some strategic purpose, which control of Bitcoin or any control of any of these blockchain coins, however they're devised, doesn't. It serves no purpose except to enrich the people who are already invested in them. But yeah, and there we have something. You know, like I say, we're getting rid of the capitalist system and the strength, you know, the power that our stock market has provided us, and stuff like that, by starting to use the government to gamble on things. That's a dangerous facet there. Let me swap batteries. Now, keeping going outside the the economic realignment, where do we go from there? Now my battery's not charging. What else is going away? Well, again, the regulatory structure, reasonable minds could disagree on how much of this we need, right? How much certain choices are worth, right? And I could understand a strong negative to certain things. One of the things that is always horrible, it's one of the places where they always look to make, where the Republicans always look to make cuts, is in the IRS. They make the IRS the bad guys, yet they complain, about fraud and abuse and all that. You actually need to hire a lot of IRS agents to prevent people from cheating the government on their taxes. You really need very specialized, expensive investigators to be able to deal with things that are as complex as a billionaire's taxes, where they have so many different ways to hide their money and to shift it around. And we're really, really bad at capturing that money. But the people who are upset are people in a somewhat lower level, but still very wealthy, right? Still very wealthy, and they're upset because they get caught trying to do the same kind of tricks and aren't able to leverage the same kind of power that the truly wealthy can in terms of manipulating our tax code. The worst of it all is, of course, that it's the people with the most money who can make it actually legal for them to hide and avoid taxes. But that's a different matter. That's the general corruption, not at the IRS, but at Congress. It is the elected officials who are corrupt here, and corrupt in so many ways, and this is totally bipartisan, right? You've got people who are probably unconnected to that corruption, who make calls for not being able to trade stocks if you're in Congress or something along those lines. Just like the president supposedly isn't supposed to be making money off his position beyond his salary. I'm going to smack you some more. People would put their investment, their stock investments and whatnot into a blind trust when running for president. What they certainly wouldn't do is be buying up properties, starting up a meme coin that just allows money to be transferred to them with no controls whatsoever, essentially. Stuff like that would just be completely disqualifying, right? Like, Jimmy Carter had to sell his fucking peanut farm that had been in his family, right? A little family-owned business he had to sell because it was considered impossible for anyone to run as president and hold a business at the same time. And now, and it only applies to one person. It really does. No one else could get away with this shit. But that's completely outside. And, the amount of money coming from, just sloshing in from foreign sources and whatnot. I mean, and of course, the guy who bought the election, Mr. Elon Musk, boy, has he made a lot of money off of that. He only spent like $250 million. He's made so many billions off of just the election itself succeeding. Just the knowledge that his hands will be on the levers of power and controlling, who's going to be able to get those big contracts. Well, it's going to be his companies. And some of it's not just, it's not as simple as like, oh, I make money off of this contract, but rather, oh, these regulatory agencies are investigating my companies and could find a lot of shit in them and have real problems. Things like the FAA, for example. Let's cut the shit out of them. Let's make sure those lawsuits are dropped and those investigations are dropped. It's just, it's insane, the level of corruption. We have never had anything like this. Which is, again, another dismantling, a dismantling of the idea that the government should not be corrupt, right? We've always had this feeling, we've always had corruption, but we've always had the feeling that it shouldn't be. And now, one of the things we're getting rid of, the emperor is able to get whatever he wants. He's able to use his office for whatever personal wealth he wants. The treasures or treasury of the United States is essentially under an emperor's control. Well, not of the United States, but it is l'état c'est moi. It really is. It really is. That's where it maybe not to the same extent, but that's where it's heading. The global free trade mechanisms that have really come about, I mean, they started earlier, but I would say they really started gelling in the 90s. And that's when we really started seeing the advantages of this, of this interconnected, the supply chains and et cetera. And there are reasons why these are problematic in certain strategic things, okay? You do not want to be dependent on chips from Taiwan in order to build your military equipment. You don't want to be forced to order your tanks or important components of your tanks from other countries unless you are absolutely certain that you're, completely linked. And we're breaking those links, right? We're fucking somehow managing to piss off Canada and to make them fearful of us, to drive them from an alliance that, has lasted so goddamn long. Basically, since the creation of the country, because England and the US had very good relations before Canada got its full, moved from a dominion to its own country. Breaking the interrelated global supply and free trade mechanisms. Again, you can make arguments on a protectionist basis, but what's going on isn't protectionism. What's going on is more like a chaos meant to destroy the capitalistic system itself. It feels like we're trying to create enough chaos with, there's tariffs, no, they're taking away for another month. There's tariffs, taking them away for another month. Businesses can't operate under that kind of regime. In fact, they can't operate under every 4 or 8 years that kind of stuff switches. Much less it's happening every couple fucking weeks, okay? But these supply chains, these kind of structures that have to be built, they're decades-long investment procedures that would have to be put into place to take any advantage of a change from free trade to a protectionist strategy. It's like having an insane person in charge. I feel like we have Caligula in charge, It just, when are we going to have is Mike Rogers or whatever his fucking name is gonna no, that's not it. Mike Johnson. Is he gonna piss off Trump at some point, or is John Thune gonna piss off Trump at some point, and we're gonna have like, can't do it in the Senate, but in the House, we could have somebody ridiculous elected as Speaker of the House. Just have, you could stick Musk in there, right? Or just whatever, It doesn't have to be an elected official. I'm not sure it has to be human, so we might see a horse. The level is just so crazy. And what is truly disgusting is the sycophancy that you see. People who know better, willing to lick his boots and his ass crack for what? For what? To help preside over the destruction of everything they believe in? Yeah. But it's interesting to watch. I will say that much for it. It's interesting to watch. Like, I did not think. Again, I look back at like Rome, and yes, we're in this position similar to the Roman Republic at the days of Marius and Sulla, where the mechanisms aren't really working and traditions are eroding, but you didn't see either of them. You saw civil war. You didn't see any of the politicians come forward and say, let's just do the stupidest ass shit we can think of and destroy everything, not just the traditions, etc., just destroy the basis of our own power, essentially. In the hopes of what? In the hopes that we can become a client state of Persia? I don't know. Should we resurrect Carthage? It's just mind-boggling how exceedingly stupid the choices are. And that I can't see an argument for any of these. There are some that are natural sort of Republican talking points. Again, let's lower taxes, let's cut the government, but not let's cut the government at random. Let's not do any due diligence in trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Let's just cut the things that we don't like and hope that they weren't doing anything important. And certainly not let us destroy the fundamental things which made us the global leader. Now, it's so funny because people complain about the Biden economy, right? People complained about the inflation there. The reality was, our economy was the envy of the world during Biden's years. We recovered from COVID better than anything else, any other country. Or, I don't know, I'm sure there might be some small ones that had some advantages that weren't touched particularly. But any of the other major countries, our economy recovered so much better than anything else, anyone else. Every country underwent some pain from the contractions in the supply chain, from the difficulties that occurred. And maybe every country reacted poorly to it. But it's almost like one of the decisions is, let us destroy that, the thing we were doing right still, right? Like, I'm not going to say we were doing right in Ukraine, because we weren't. Biden was way, way too wishy-washy and way too mealy-mouthed about actually utilizing it. That conflict should have destroyed Putin. It really should have. Any reasonable support would have turned things around in that second year. And, you know, but instead we got this sort of, let's just keep slowly bleeding him dry. I don't know. I really don't know. But it definitely did not seem like the best choices there. And even so, the Republicans of that period saw Biden as being a little too slow and a little too hesitant in terms of the support he was giving. Your Lindsey Grahams, etc. And now, nope. The emperor says we changed our alliance structure. The emperor says we don't want to be in NATO. You know, the emperor says we need Greenland and we need to invade Canada. But it's a mad emperor. You know, this isn't just an autocrat, right? This is like, this is just, I expected us to shift into something very dark and very bleak. I didn't expect for us to shift into something that had no idea of maintaining the United States' like role in the world as a power. Like it seems like everything is designed to actually destroy the United States. Not just turn it fascist or authoritarian or whatever, to actually destroy the United States on an economic basis, on a sort of unity basis. I did expect that, but the unity being destroyed. But that was happening no matter who was in charge, I think. On a world stage, as a world power, in terms of respect, in terms of just everything is being, in terms of the actual economy of the country. It's just everything is being, the worst possible choices seem to be being made. And it's hard to see. Like, you know, putting a nut job like RFK in charge of health? Okay, look, you know, Himmler was into like looking for the lost ark, right? You know? Germany was still able to do okay with something like that going on. We can survive that kind of thing. I'm sure there will be horrible after effects to it. But it's like the entire thing is just a clown show. And it's hard to imagine that anyone is actually driving us in this direction at all. The only thing I can see is that there is a desire to destroy America to such a degree that it basically becomes a techno-feudal society. Now, that is not what a big part of MAGA is about. And you know, it's kind of funny when you start thinking, kind of hoping Steve Bannon saves us all. Yeah, that, I don't know. You know, I think like Rome, he served his purpose. He'll be gone. He'll be gone. Anyway, because he just doesn't have the power. You know, populism is not enough, right? The populism is a tool to get those who actually had the power and have the power currently to reshape things into something that just, you know, look, if you are one of the richest men in the world, you're not dependent on the United States for that wealth necessarily. What are you dependent on? It can switch which country is going to treat you the best. You can switch where your power lies. Now, I guess there might be the hope that, like, they don't see it's not even in the top 20 anymore, I think. I don't know. I know, like, the economy of Russia is below that of Italy, which just feels so wrong. But, you know, Putin has destroyed his country so much, but he and his little coterie have become far, far wealthier and have far more personal perks than is available to any other leader of an even somewhat major country. And I think that's what's being aimed for here. I think that's what's being aimed for. Dismantle the world and national power of the United States for personal advantage. And, you know, to who? I don't know. I don't know. We shall see. But it is really amusing, and that's actually one of the things. If you want to look in history for, I was saying, you know, I look back and, like, Alcibiades, this, you know, feels sort of like the equivalent, but it's like, he kind of got shunned and wasn't able to get power. He wasn't able to get the power he thought he was due anymore, and turned code. That's different. This is maybe similar to the rise of Putin. Maybe. But at that point, Russia was such a mess and was such a destroyed country. Here we're looking at what was the unipower and is certainly, you know, being reallocated to not be in that position. But it's almost like, well, if that's not worth it, we're all going to go all in making this really great for a small handful of very wealthy people and the guy who managed to get elected. Maybe he'll get some of this, but it's just, it's almost impossible to fathom in any other way. The only lens I can look through is that Trump is being manipulated, especially by Musk, but maybe by people like Thiel and others, into a situation where the wealth of the United States is going to be divided up completely. They already got a lot, right? They've got a huge amount already. But what they don't have is the power that they want. And the only way to do that is that sort of feudal technocracy type of idea. And I think that's what they're aiming for. I think that's what they're aiming for. And that somewhere or another, there's essentially an alliance with the Putins, with the Xis, towards, hey, if we dismantle the United States, essentially you guys come out as winners and we come out as big winners, maybe not as big as you guys, but okay. I just don't know. I mean, it's like you have to look to craziness to be able to explain this shit. It just doesn't make sense. Anyway, up she goes. It's time for me to waste time on raid and stop thinking.